The courtroom went quiet when he laughed. Not the teenager standing at the defendant's table. Not his exhausted public defender. Not the mother clenching a crumpled tissue in the second row. It was the judge. Judge Malcolm Harlan leaned back in his high-back leather chair and let a shallow chuckle slip out, like he'd heard this kind of thing 1,000 times before and it bored him now. "Another one with excuses," he said, his voice echoing off the polished wood. "Go on, son. Entertain the court." The teenager's throat moved as he swallowed. He was 17, maybe, with tired eyes and a bruise fading along his jaw. His hands gripped the edge of the table, like it was the last solid thing he had left. "Why, Your Honor," he began. "I wasn't trying to resist. I was just, my little sister was." The judge raised an eyebrow, amused. "Let me guess. You were protecting someone. You children always are, until the evidence comes out." A faint ripple of laughter rolled from the back row. Someone smirked. Someone shook their head. The boy's mother flinched. "I'm not lying," the teen said softly. Judge Harlan sighed. "Son, I've been on this bench for 27 years. I know the difference between a lie and a story you've told yourself so many times it feels true. What I didn't know was that this case would break something open in him he'd spent years trying to keep buried, and that the person who would hold up the mirror was already walking toward his courtroom door."
Before we continue, if you believe that people deserve to be heard before they're judged, and you want more powerful, eye-opening stories like this, go ahead and subscribe to Black Justice and stay with us to the end of this narration. It helps the channel grow and keeps these stories alive. Like, comment, and share this video so you never miss the next one. Your support helps us keep telling stories that matter. Now back to the story.
The teenager's name was Isaiah. His hoodie was clean but worn, his sneakers scuffed, his eyes red from a night of no sleep. He stood straight, even though his knees looked like they wanted to fold. "My little sister was crying," Isaiah said, voice unsteady. "We were walking home. These guys came out of nowhere, yelling, 'Pushing!' I didn't know they were cops at first. I put my arm in front of her." The prosecutor's chair creaked as she shifted, flipping through her file. "The officers identified themselves," she said crisply. "The defendant refused a lawful command to get on the ground. He pulled away when they tried to detain him." "I didn't pull away," Isaiah said quickly. "I turned to make sure my sister wasn't on the ground. They grabbed me from behind. Judge Harlan held up a hand. "That's enough," he said. "We don't need a play-by-play performance." He turned a page on the file in front of him, not really reading it. His mind had already settled. Teenager, late at night, resisting arrest. He knew the pattern. He thought he knew the boy. Down in the front row, Isaiah's mother blinked back tears. Her fingers twisted around her purse strap like it was a rope. "Please, Your Honor," she whispered under her breath. "Just listen to him." The public defender, a woman in her 30s named Rachel, leaned toward the microphone. "Your Honor, if I may, Isaiah has no prior record. He works weekends. He helps care for his sister. The officer's own statement admits that. And yet here we are," the judge cut in dryly. "If he's such a model citizen, why are we in my courtroom?" Rachel's jaw clenched. "Because fear makes people move fast, Your Honor," she said. "And sometimes when you're scared, your body reacts before your brain can catch up." The judge smirked. "Fear doesn't excuse disobedience," he replied, "especially when you're dealing with law enforcement. If he had simply complied, we wouldn't be having this conversation." Isaiah's eyes dropped. His shoulders tightened. Each word made the room smaller. At the back, one of the court officers glanced at another. They'd seen this before, how the judge could make a kid feel 3 inches tall with just a handful of sentences. Rachel took a breath. "With respect, Your Honor, there are discrepancies in the report, and I believe if you allow Isaiah to explain." "I've heard enough explanation for a lifetime," the judge said. He closed the file, as though that ended the matter. The door at the rear of the courtroom swung open. No one turned at first. Doors open all the time. Lawyers, clerks, late observers. But then footsteps, fast, uneven, clattered against the floor, rushing down the aisle with just enough urgency to make heads shift. A young man in a navy suit, slightly wrinkled, hair tousled and jaw tight, slipped into the gallery. He looked like he had run there. His tie was crooked, and his eyes were red-rimmed, as if he hadn't slept any better than Isaiah. He slid into the third row, chest heaving quietly, trying not to draw attention. But the moment his face tilted up toward the bench, Judge Harlan saw him. Their eyes met. The judge's expression faltered for the first time that morning, because the young man in the third row was his son. "Ethan," the judge said before he could stop himself. The entire courtroom turned. The young man stiffened, swallowing. "Sorry, Your Honor. I didn't mean to interrupt." His voice wobbled slightly, the way someone's does when they're still trying to figure out if they should be here. "Do you have business in this courtroom?" The judge asked more formally now, trying to bend his tone back into authority. "In a way," Ethan said quietly. "I'm here to watch." He took a seat, but his eyes didn't leave Isaiah. Rachel glanced from the judge to Ethan, connecting the resemblance. The jawline, the brows, the way they both clenched their hands when they were trying to control something inside. The judge cleared his throat and shifted in his chair. "Then sit and observe," he said, "and don't interrupt again." But his voice had lost its earlier ease. Something had cracked. He turned back to Isaiah, trying to recover the distance. "Given the nature of your behavior and your refusal to comply," the judge said, "detention is a very real possibility." Isaiah's mother gasped. Rachel's hand shot to Isaiah's arm beneath the table, steadying him. "I can recommend juvenile detention with review in 6 months," the judge continued, "or we can explore more lenient arrangement, depending on your willingness to accept responsibility." Isaiah's lips parted. I'm not saying I'm perfect," he said, "but I swear I wasn't trying to fight them. I was scared. My sister was screaming. I didn't even know why they were grabbing me. And yet they were," the judge said sharply, "because they perceived a threat." Ethan's jaw tightened. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, breathing a little too fast, because he had heard a variation of that sentence before. And the last time he heard it, he had been the one on the receiving end. Rachel spoke again, quieter now. "Your Honor, all I'm asking is that you read the full report, including the part where the officer admits he never saw a weapon and that Isaiah immediately stopped when he realized." "I said I've heard enough," the judge snapped. He picked up his pen and began to write. Ethan stood up. "Dad." The room froze. Silence. The word hung in the air like a drop weight. Isaiah blinked, then turned slowly, eyes moving from the bench to the young man standing in the aisle. Judge Harlan's eyes flashed. "Sit down, Ethan. Now." "No," Ethan replied, voice shaking but clear. "I won't. Not this time." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. The court officer shifted, unsure whether to intervene. Ethan took a step forward. "Your Honor," he said, forcing himself to use the title. "May I be heard for a moment?" "This is highly inappropriate," the judge said. "You are not counsel. You are not sworn in, and you are certainly not." "Neither was I," Ethan said softly. The judge faltered. Ethan's eyes glistened as memories surfaced. The screech of tires, the harsh glare of flashing lights, the weight of his own father's disappointment. "Do you remember what you said to me?" Ethan continued. "The night I got pulled over for reckless driving?" The courtroom watched, barely breathing. The judge's hand tightened on the arm of his chair. "This is not relevant," he said through his teeth. "It is to him," Ethan said, nodding toward Isaiah. "And it is to you." He took another step forward into the center aisle. "You told me," Ethan said, voice breaking, "that everyone deserves to be seen as more than their worst moment. You begged the officer for a second chance for me. You called the chief. You made calls. You pulled strings I didn't deserve." He wiped quickly at his face. "I was drunk that night," Ethan said, "over the legal limit. You know it. I could have hurt someone. I could have killed someone." Isaiah's eyes widened. "You didn't let them treat me like I was disposable," Ethan said. "You didn't laugh at me in front of a courtroom. You didn't tell me my fear didn't matter." The judge's face went pale. "That's enough," he whispered. Ethan shook his head. "No," he said. "It's not." He turned toward Isaiah. I don't know you, Ethan said to him, but I know what it feels like to stand there and have someone else hold your whole life in a file they haven't really read. Isaiah watched him, breathing shallow, like someone who had just seen a door open in a room he thought had none. Ethan looked back up at the bench. You told me second chances matter, he said. You told me you believed in them. You told me you were grateful the officer didn't treat me the way some judges might. The judge swallowed hard. And now, Ethan whispered, you're being that judge for him. The room felt like it shrank by half. Rachel stared at Ethan, stunned at the vulnerability he was bleeding into the air. The prosecutor shifted, uncomfortable but quiet. Even the court reporter's fingers slowed over the keys. He didn't raise his voice, Rachel would recall later. He raised the truth. Judge Harlan's hand slipped from the pen. He looked at his son, really looked at him, for the first time in months. The guilt he'd buried, the fear that had gnawed at the edges of his conscience, it all rose up at once. He glanced down at the file in front of him. For the first time since the hearing began, he actually read it. He saw the lines he'd skimmed before. Isaiah walking his 8-year-old sister home from a friend's house. The unmarked car that stopped too quickly beside them. The shouted commands that blurred into noise. The little girl crying, clinging to her brother's arm. The officer's own note. No weapon observed. Subject complied after initial hesitation. He saw the words, no prior record. He saw the words, honor roll. He saw the words, part-time job. He saw the boy's life instead of his assumptions. The judge let out a slow breath, the fight draining from his shoulders. Isaiah, he said quietly, stepped forward again. Isaiah hesitated, then obeyed. He stood at the table, eyes wary, confused by the sudden shift in the judge's tone. Judge Harlan's gaze softened. I owe you something I did not give you when you first stood there, he said. My attention. The room stilled. I was quick to judge you, the judge continued. Too quick. I heard your age. I heard the charge. And I decided I knew who you were. He swallowed. I was wrong. Isaiah searched his face, not quite believing it. I read the full report. The judge said, I see now that you were scared, that you tried to protect your sister, that you stopped when you understood what was happening, that you have worked hard to stay out of trouble. He looked down briefly, then back up, and I see that if someone had made a different decision with my own son, he might be standing where you are. A quiet shock passed through the gallery. Isaiah's eyes flicked to Ethan, who managed a small, apologetic nod. So here's what I'm going to do, Judge Harlan said, voice steady but changed. I am not sending you to detention. Isaiah's mother muffled a cry of relief. Rachel closed her eyes, exhaling. I am ordering community service and a mentorship program. The judge continued. You will attend sessions that help you understand your rights, your responsibilities, and how to navigate moments of fear without putting yourself at greater risk. This case will be eligible for expungement upon completion. He paused. And I am putting a note in the record, he added quietly, that the court acknowledges its own initial mishandling of this matter. The prosecutor looked startled, but said nothing. Isaiah blinked, tears finally breaking free. "T.A., thank you, Your Honor," he whispered. The judge nodded. "This is not me doing you a favor," he said. "It is me correcting the way I failed to see you at first." He shifted in his chair, the robe suddenly feeling heavier. "I also want to say this to you and to the court," he added. "Respect is not a reward. It is not something earned only when a file looks clean or when a face looks familiar. Respect is the starting point." His eyes moved across the room, to Rachel, to the prosecutor, to the officers, to his own son. "And I forgot that," he said. "Today reminded me." He cleared his throat. "Isaiah," he continued gently, "you have a chance to move forward from this without carrying it like a sentence for the rest of your life. Take that chance. Honor it. Not for me, not for this court, but for yourself, and for your sister watching how you rise from this." Isaiah nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. "Yes, Your Honor," he said. "I will." The gavel came down softly. Case continued for review, following completion of program. The judge said, The clerk called the next matter, but the room wasn't the same. When Isaiah turned to leave, his mother wrapped him in a shaking embrace. Rachel leaned in and whispered, "You did well. Remember that." Ethan stepped out into the aisle, catching Isaiah's eye as he passed. "Hey," Ethan said quietly, "for what it's worth, I'm sorry you had to be the one to show him." Isaiah shrugged, still stunned. Maybe he needed it. Isaiah replied softly. Ethan nodded. "Some of us do," he said. They exchanged a look. Two lives had traveled different roads, but intersected in a moment of truth neither of them would forget. Up on the bench, Judge Harlan watched them go. He felt the weight of his robe differently now, not as a shield, but as a responsibility he had been taking for granted. He thought about calls he'd made for his son, about mercy he'd begged for in private, about the way he had laughed at a boy in public. He thought about power, how it could punish, how it could protect, how it could blind. And as the next case was called, he made himself a silent promise to never again let his assumption speak louder than someone's plea, to remember that behind every file was a life, behind every charge was a story, and behind every voice was a human being who deserved to be heard. Because at the end of the day, the difference between justice and cruelty is often just one choice: to listen.
If this story touched your heart or made you think about how we treat each other, take a moment to subscribe. Your support helps us share more Black justice stories that inspire change, spark awareness, and remind the world what dignity truly looks like. Share and leave a comment. Your voice helps bring these stories to life and keeps the message alive. Your voice matters here,